what if your gut feeling isn't just, an idiom? What if it's a literal connection to how you think? And what if your heart is doing way more than just pumping blood, like actually influencing your consciousness?
Yeah, it's pretty mind-bending stuff.
Today on the Deep Dive, we're getting into these really fascinating, often overlooked connections between our gut, our heart, even our skin, and how they profoundly shape our minds, our emotions, even our conscious experience itself.
It really does challenge those traditional ideas about where you actually end,
Totally.
And for this deep dive, we're pulling from all sorts of places: neurobiology, gastroenterology, philosophy of mind, psychophysiology.
So a real mix.
A really rich mix, yeah. Gives us a lot of angles to look from.
Okay, so our mission today, let's try and unpack these hidden sensory systems, explore these communication networks inside us.
And maybe challenge some assumptions.
Exactly. Get ready for some, hopefully, aha moments that might just change how you think about your own body and mind.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. Where do we start? The gut.
Let's start with the gut. What some researchers are now calling our original brain, which sounds kind of wild, right?
The original brain, okay.
Yeah. So it's not just a tube for food. It has its own sophisticated nervous system, the enteric nervous system, or ENS.
The second brain, I've heard it called that?
That's the one, the second brain. And people started studying its role way back 1899. These physiologists, Bayliss and Starling, they first described peristalsis, those muscle waves that push food along. That was the start of understanding the ENS's function.
Right, the muscle movements. But it's more than just muscles, isn't it?
Oh, way more. It's surprisingly complex. It's got support cells, kind of like the glial cells in your actual brain.
No way.
Yeah. And it even has its own sort of barrier around its blood vessels, much like the blood-brain barrier protecting your main brain.
So it's really like a self-contained system down there.
Pretty much. And from an evolutionary angle, some theories suggest the ENS might actually be older than the central nervous system.
Older? How does that work?
Well, think about really early organisms like Hydra. Their first coordinated movements, the kind needing a nervous system, probably involved the gut.
Managing digestion, maybe?
Exactly. And even things like sea stars show basic learning. It suggests even simple nerve nets were capable of, something maybe like protocognition.
Protocognition, wow. So you're saying we might need to rethink what cognition even is.
That definitely raises the question, doesn't it? Should we broaden the definition to include these really fundamental internal processing systems?
That's a big thought. Okay, so it's complex, maybe even ancient. But what happens when this second brain goes wrong?
Right. That's where you see a lot of gastrointestinal motility disorders. Many of them are directly linked to problems with the ENS.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, you can have issues with the number of nerve cells, too many, too few. Sometimes it's genetic, like Hirschsprung's disease.
Okay.
Or it can be acquired diseases that damage the neurons, like Chagas disease. Even issues with specific support cells in the gut can cause problems.
So these aren't just stomach aches. These are like neurological issues in the gut.
Essentially, yes. It highlights just how critical this independent nervous system is for our basic physical function and well-being.
Okay, so the gut's got its own brain, basically. But how does it, talk to the brain in our head? That seems crucial.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the gut-brain axis, the GBA. Think of it like a superhighway. A two-way street.
Two-way.
Definitely two-way. It's this constant, intricate communication network. It links the emotional and cognitive centers in your head brain with all the functions happening down in your gut. And it involves, pretty much everything.
Like what?
Your central nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, the autopilot one, the enteric nervous system itself, your stress response system, the HPA axis, your immune system, hormones.
Wow. Okay.
And, this is key, the trillions of microbes living in your gut. The microbiota. It's all part of this huge conversation.
And how does the signal primarily travel? Is there like a main cable?
There is. The vagus nerve.
Oh.
That's the main neural pathway, the sort of information superhighway for gut-brain communication.
Vagus nerve. I've heard about that.
Yeah, it can directly activate brain regions involved in things like memory, like a hippocampus.
Yeah, and it's involved in emotions too, right? I think I read something about the polyvagal theory.
Exactly. The polyvagal theory positions the vagus nerve as a key player in how we recognize emotions and engage socially, especially in mammals. Its activity is tied into really complex stuff: attention, movement, emotion, communication.
Okay.
And there's a fascinating study using transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation, TVNS. They basically gently stimulate the nerve through the skin.
And what happened?
Get this. It enhanced people's ability to recognize anger from body language.
Okay.
But it actually reduced their ability to recognize sadness.
Whoa. So it's not just boosting all emotion recognition. It's specific. It's fine-tuning it.
Precisely. It shows how tweaking these neural pathways can have really specific effects on how we perceive emotions.
That's incredible. All right, you mentioned the microbiota earlier. Our gut bugs. Tell me more about their role in this whole axis.
Oh, they're huge players. The gut microbiota, it's sometimes called the second largest genome in the human body. It has this enormous impact on our health.
How? What are they doing down there?
Well, for one, they're like little chemical factories. They produce a whole range of neurotransmitters.
Like brain chemicals made in the gut.
Yep. Things like GABA, which is calming, noradrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine. Your gut bacteria are making these.
Seriously? Which ones?
Well, Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium make GABA. Others, like Bacillus and E. coli, can make noradrenaline or serotonin. One type, Bifidobacterium infantis, can even raise your body's levels of tryptophan.
Which is the precursor for serotonin in the brain, right?
Exactly. So they're directly influencing the building blocks for your brain's chemistry.
My mind is kind of blown right now.
Yeah.
So our gut bacteria are making mood chemicals.
They are. And it's not just neurotransmitters. They also produce other things like short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, like butyrate, propionate, acetate. These affect all sorts of things in the brain. Neuroplasticity, which is how your brain adapts. Epigenetics, your immune system, hormone control. They do this partly by interacting with that vagus nerve we talked about.
It's all connected.
It really is. Plus, other metabolites they produce are linked to things like brain blood vessel health or even offer neuroprotection.
And they talk to the immune system, too.
Definitely. The gut's nervous system, the ENS, has immune sensors called toll-like receptors. They recognize bits of bacteria or viruses.
Okay.
And this interaction helps regulate gut motility, keep things moving, and even helps enteric neurons survive. It's constant dialogue.
So the takeaway here is, if your gut microbes are out of whack,
then it can potentially ripple outwards. Alterations in the gut microbiota are being linked to emotional dysregulation, neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, and even neurodevelopmental conditions like autism spectrum disorder. It really underscores how deeply our internal ecosystem impacts our mind and brain health.
This leads us perfectly into something called interoception. It's a sense most people don't even know they have.
Right. We learned about the five senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. But there are these other sort of hidden senses.
Like balance.
The vestibular system, and proprioception, knowing where your body parts are without looking.
Right.
And then there's interoception, which is essentially your awareness of your internal bodily states.
Like feeling your heartbeat, or hunger, or needing the bathroom.
Exactly. It's all those signals from your body to your brain, how your brain processes them, and crucially, how that influences your thoughts, feelings, your mental state.
So why is this important? How does it affect our well-being?
Well, research shows that higher interoceptive awareness, being more tuned in to your body's signals, is linked to better emotional regulation.
Makes sense. If you feel the anxiety bubbling up earlier, maybe you can manage it better.
Precisely. It's also linked to less alexithymia, that's difficulty identifying your own emotions,
Yeah.
and lower rates of depression and anxiety. It's really considered fundamental for psychological well-being. It forms the basis for feeling like an integrated self.
And people can differ in this, right? Like being more or less sensitive.
Absolutely. Just like with external senses, you can be hyposensitive, meaning under-responsive, or hypersensitive, over-responsive to interoceptive signals, or external ones too.
So you could be really sensitive to loud noises, but maybe not notice when you're thirsty?
Exactly. Or hypersensitive to touch, but hyposensitive to taste. Knowing your own sensory profile, as it's sometimes called, can help you understand your triggers and what helps you feel regulated.
Can you give an example, maybe with proprioception?
Sure. Someone who's under-responsive to proprioceptive input, the sense of body position and movement, might struggle with knowing how much force to use.
Like breaking pencils when they write.
Yeah, or giving really hard hugs without meaning to. They might also crave intense movement, jumping, crashing, rough play because they need more input to register it.
And maybe less aware of safety sometimes, bumping into things.
That can happen too, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting those subtle cues about where their body is in space as strongly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's shift gears a bit. to the heart. You said earlier it's doing more than just pumping blood.
Much more.
Yeah.
The heart sends out these incredibly powerful signals that influence how we think, feel, and act.
Powerful how?
Get this. The heart generates an electromagnetic field that's about 5,000 times stronger than the brain's field.
5,000 times? That's huge.
It is. And this field extends several feet out from the body, measurably.
Wow. And there are brain signals related to the heart, right? HBEPs?
Heartbeat-evoked potentials, yes. These are signals you can measure with an EEG, showing the brain processing the input it gets from the heart, synchronized with each beat.
Okay.
They happen really fast, like within 200, 400 milliseconds after a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And they're linked to brain areas, key for interoception and emotion, the anterior cingulate cortex, the insula.
And people who are better at interoception, they have stronger HBEPs.
That's what the research suggests, yeah. A stronger mind-heart connection, you could say.
And you mentioned something really intriguing earlier about the heart anticipating things before the brain.
Yeah, some research indicates the heart can actually detect and respond to sensory information fractions of a second before the brain seems to process it consciously.
So, intuition, is that what we're talking about?
It certainly raises that possibility, a kind of anticipatory awareness originating perhaps partly from the heart.
Okay, let's talk about heart coherence and HRV. What's that about?
So heart rate variability, HRV, measures the natural variation in time between your heartbeats. It's a sign of a healthy, adaptable nervous system.
Higher variability is generally better.
Generally, yes. And heart coherence is a specific state you can consciously shift into. It's a smooth sine wave-like pattern in your heart rhythms.
How do you get into that state?
One simple way is through slow, steady breathing. Around 6 breaths per minute seems to be a sweet spot for maximizing HRV and inducing coherence.
And what does being in coherence do?
When your heart is in this coherent state, it sends more harmonious, ordered signals throughout your body. This helps balance your nervous system, your hormones, your immune system.
Okay.
It's associated with better thinking, clearer focus, emotional stability, and overall physical health. It's like optimizing your internal operating system.
And people are actually using this. Athletes, professionals.
Oh, yeah. Technologies and techniques, like those from the HeartMath Institute, are used pretty widely now by health pros, but also top athletes, NFL, NBA players, Olympians.
Wow.
To help them manage stress, regulate emotions, and perform at their peak by getting their heart and brain synchronized.
This leads to some pretty big ideas, doesn't it? You mentioned a theory about the heart and consciousness.
Right, the heart-based resonant field theory of consciousness. It's definitely more theoretical, pushing boundaries.
What does it propose?
It suggests the heart might act as a kind of biological antenna or interface that allows us to access a broader, non-local field of information or consciousness, something beyond just our physical body.
Non-local, like outside of ourselves.
Potentially, yes. The idea is that when we generate strong heart coherence through things like deep compassion, sincerity, maybe focused prayer.
Which connects to some spiritual ideas, right? You mentioned an Islamic hadith.
Exactly. Many traditions emphasize heartfelt sincerity. The theory suggests this internal coherence might actually resonate or synchronize with external fields.
Like what kind of fields?
Like the Earth's own natural electromagnetic frequencies, the Schumann resonances. These are global resonances between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere.
So the idea is our heart coherence could tune into these planetary rhythms.
That's the speculative leap, yeah. It suggests maybe our collective emotions and intentions, if coherent, could interact with these larger systems. It moves beyond a purely materialistic view of consciousness.
Which definitely brings us to the big philosophical questions about consciousness itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the hard problem, as David Chalmers called it. How does subjective experience, the feeling of redness, the taste of chocolate, the sense of being you arise from physical stuff, from neurons firing?
You know the brain is involved, obviously.
Right. Most agree there's a causal connection. But the how is the mystery. How does brain activity become subjective feeling?
I've heard that radio analogy used here, too.
Yeah, it's a helpful way to think about alternatives. Maybe the brain doesn't create consciousness like a factory makes smoke. Maybe it receives or tunes into it like a radio tunes into a broadcast.
So if the radio breaks?
The broadcast doesn't stop, just the reception. It offers a different way to think about why consciousness seems dependent on the brain. without saying the brain is consciousness.
Interesting. It also ties into ideas like the extended mind, right? That thinking doesn't just happen inside the skull.
Exactly. Philosophers like Andy Clark and David Chalmers propose this. If you use a notebook to offload information, with your phone to navigate, is that tool literally part of your cognitive process? It challenges the idea that cognition is neatly contained within the skin and skull. And it definitely pushes back against that old, outdated, homunculus idea, the little man in the head controlling things.
Which nobody really believes anymore, right?
Not in science or philosophy, no. It just pushes the problem back, who's controlling the little man's brain.
And Eastern philosophies, how do they fit in?
Many Eastern traditions, like Buddhism, for example, have long viewed the self differently. Not as a fixed, solid entity, but more as a process.
Yeah.
A collection of constantly changing perceptions, feelings, thoughts. Less of a noun, more of a verb. Which resonates, I think, with this more dynamic, interconnected view we're discussing.
Okay, one more system to touch on. Literally, touch itself. It seems simple, but I guess it's not.
Definitely not simple. Our somatosensory system, which handles touch, is incredibly complex. It has different channels, basically.
Channels for what?
Well, one main subdivision deals with mechanical stuff, light touch, vibration, pressure, skin stretch. Another deals with pain and temperature nociception. But then there are these specialized nerve fibers, C-tactile efferents. They seem specifically tuned to respond best to gentle, slow, caress-like touch.
The kind of touch that feels comforting or affectionate.
Exactly. It suggests we have a dedicated pathway for processing that kind of socially relevant, pleasant touch.
That makes sense. And does this processing differ for people?
It seems so. There's some really interesting research on skin picking disorder, SPD.
Okay, what did they find?
They found that individuals with SPD experience that gentle CT optimal brushing very differently. They reported less pleasure from it.
Less?
Yeah, less pleasure, higher arousal, and actually a greater urge to pick their skin compared to control participants.
Wow. And in their brains.
Brain scans can differences too. More activation in certain parietal areas involved in sensory processing and attention. And they were missing a deactivation in frontal areas that the control group showed. These areas are involved in attentional control and integrating sensory info. So it suggests a real difference in how their brains are wired to interpret that specific kind of touch.
So touch isn't just one thing. Different types of touch trigger different pathways, and that can vary between people.
Precisely. And the impact of touch goes beyond just sensation. We know touch can communicate specific emotions, sympathy, gratitude, anger.
Nice.
It can even subtly influence our thoughts and judgments. Like, studies have shown the firmness of an object someone holds can affect their social judgments.
Seriously?
Yeah. And get this, some research even suggests we can sense touch, or perhaps the intention of touch, slightly beyond our physical body boundary, contributing to our sense of personal space.
Okay, my mind is officially expanded. Gut, heart, skin. It's all so much more connected and influential than I ever realized.
It really is.
So you see how much more interconnected you really are internally between all these systems and maybe even externally in ways we're just beginning to grasp.
It's a paradigm shift, really.
Yeah. So the next time you get that gut feeling, or you feel a strong emotion welling up, or even just notice a sensation on your skin, maybe pause and consider this incredible orchestra playing inside you, the ancient wisdom in your gut, the rhythms of your heart, the signals from your skin, all working together.
Constantly shaping your unique experience of being alive, of being you.
What if true self-awareness isn't just about listening to the thoughts in your head?
What if it's about learning to listen to the whispers and sometimes the shouts of your entire intricate, intelligent body?